So what are the principles of the UAS project? We're going to talk a lot more about what a UAS project is in the next slide. So project principles provide a structure to organize the key tasks that must be completed for the project to be a success. All right, so basically what I'm laying out for you here in principles of the UAS project is that structure so that we can organize anything that is going to be important for that project. We can find a place for it. We can organize it. We can put it somewhere within a written project plan, or we know that it exists within some element of the project. So if someone is in charge of a certain element of the project, then we can use principles of the project to say, well, what are the pieces that I need to be aware of while I'm managing that element? All right, so there are 4 principles I define for the UAS project. So principle number 1, defining the project. So this is the overall and specific objectives to be completed with the UAS, right? And so notice that each of these principles is going to be specific to the UAS or UAS operations. All right, the second principle of the UAS project, UAS components and equipment. So driven by the objectives which define the required payload. All right, I'll elucidate on that in a little bit. Then the third objective is the operations plan. So the operations plan is going to lay out, it's a menu for success, details and text. All the elements leading to and that include the flight operations, recovery, and demobilization. So operations plan is what talks about all the little elements that we need to put together that are related to the actual flights, to data production, to getting to the site, being present while we need to be present, and then demobilizing off the site. And then finally, the fourth principle is the product delivery. All right, and so this is where we're taking what we flew the UAS to capture some information or to do some work. Now we're going to take that information and we're going to make it a meaningful product for whoever our client is. Now, this might be a little bit different depending on what exactly your UAS project is. And for a lot of service-based UAS projects, such as like firefighting with drones, there really isn't much of a fourth principle, right? So if we put a fire out with a drone, really the fourth principle might be just sort of a status report or a report that goes out to fellow firefighters about how the drone helped, how many resources it used, stuff like that. But really, where the fourth principle is very important are your typical data missions, where the actual flights themselves represent a very small proportion of the amount of time we spend on a project. We plan for the project, we fly the project, and then we produce the data that's going to be delivered. That's where the fourth principle is really a very important component. All right, we'll get into that here a little more. So key terms, and these are all, boy, there's a couple key terms in here that might be mission, operations plan, projects. A lot of these terms in here are based on the operations class. So like, what do I do when I have a critical battery? What is an emergency procedure? Those things that we're really not gonna get into too much in this class. That's all really more related to 2040 and stuff we're actually getting into this week with that class. All right, so what are our overall objectives, or the objectives for this module? So the overall objective of the module is to gain the framework for organizing the key components to conducting a UAS project. Identify a UAS project, so identify what makes a UAS project. Number 2, understand the principles of planning a UAS project. And number 3, consider the importance of project principles for differing objectives. All right, so what this is saying is that I'm going to give you this framework for laying out a UAS project, and ideally what you're going to pull from this is you're going to be able to, if you're in a conversation with someone about a UAS project, if you understand the principles of the project, you should have just some key things in your mind, some really important questions that you could ask the operator or whoever's putting on this project, that, you know, will sort of be able to either more well define the project in your mind, or if you're asking really good questions, you might actually better define the project even for the operator themselves. And that's really the overall goal. And what we'll see is that just like I talked about with Principle 4 not being terribly important for a service-based UAS project, that these principles can be manipulated and changed based on the many different things that